I'd like to call this meeting of the Public Works Committee to order. Today is May the 7th of 2013. Years flying by. Commissioner Jernigan, would you open with a prayer, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this another wonderful day. We thank you for this great county of Rutherford. And we thank you for all the elected officials. Be with them and let them make the right decisions is what's best for Rutherford County and for this country. And pray for our president and all the leaders in Washington and let them do the right things, what's best for the United States. Amen.
Amen. Okay, I believe everybody has received a copy of the minutes from last month. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion we approve as presented.
Second.
Any discussion or changes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No. Motion passes. Okay, first on our agenda, we have the planning department. While they're coming up, I'd like to welcome all of our guests. We have lots of guests in the audience tonight. So thank you for coming.
Good evening, Commissioners. Hope you're all doing well tonight.
Thank you.
Just have a couple of things for your consideration tonight. The first thing is the subdivision lot inventory. I'll call your attention to that. Looking at my copy, chances are I probably did the same thing on yours. I don't know how to operate a stapler, apparently, and I apparently stapled the wrong end, so I apologize for that. But you can see the recorded plats list with the available lots. Currently, our total available lots as of the end of April is down to 961. That's a little over about 300 or so less than we had this time last year. So we're not seeing just a whole lot of new plat approvals. We are seeing a few, but we are starting to see more and more lots leave our inventory, the available lot inventory that we do have. So I just bring that to your attention, and again apologize that my stapling skills need some work. With that, I'll go ahead and move on to our zoning hearings that we have. We have about 4 different applications that we will be looking at for you this month. The first is 3 rezonings and one's a text amendment. The first is for some property along Shelbyville Highway 3892. This is property owned by Mr. Edgar Arnold. The property was actually zoned for commercial purposes back in 2003. There's been various conditional use permits issued to the property over time, most recently for a temporary fireworks tent back in 2012. When we did the comprehensive rezoning of the county that took effect January 1st, the property, due to the fact that it was only being used for residential well, it was vacant really, wasn't really being used for anything, we zoned the property residential, consistent with all the property around it, except really to the south where there is some commercial property. The owner has since expressed his desire to have it rezoned back to commercial, so he's asked for commercial services zoning, which would be consistent with a lot of the uses that he had been approved for in the past. All of the cases we'll be looking at were recommended approved by the Planning Commission by unanimous vote. I'll just kind of say that as a blanket statement right now. It is adjacent to commercial services property, so this really would be consistent with the surrounding zoning. It is also across the street from the existing county rock quarry. The second piece of property is located along Browns Mill Road, 6241. This is owned by Howard and Susan Wilson. They're asking for their property. It's currently zoned residential medium density. They're asking for it to be zoned for agricultural residential. There is a house on the property. They do use it for some farming activities, hay and those kind of things. His wife is also preparing to open up a special events business. They have a barn on the property that you can see on the maps that's on the iPad or in your agenda packets. The agricultural residential zone does allow that use by right. We talked originally about it, and he could either go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for special events or go this route. He decided to go this route. The third application is for a piece of property located along Double Springs Road. It's at the intersection of Double Springs and John Bragg Highway. This property was actually requested by the owner to be zoned agricultural residential when we were doing the rezoning of the county. Unfortunately, this was an oversight on staff's part. Despite the fact that we did have a request from him, we just inadvertently left it off the map. So when we realized that had happened, we called the owner of the property, asked him if he still desired that. He said he did, so we went ahead and initiated the rezoning of this property to be zoned agricultural residential. The fourth application is another staff-initiated application. We call it our glitch ordinance amendments. You'll recall during the conversations we had regarding the update to the zoning ordinance that probably somewhere around 6-month time frame or so into the enforcement of the new ordinance, we'd probably come across a lot of things that maybe typos, things that just needed to be tweaked, things that we thought worked well when we saw them on paper that maybe in practice didn't work as effectively as we thought they would. So what you have before you in your packets is a memo, several pages long. I'm not going to go over all the changes tonight. Most of them are fairly minor in nature. Probably the largest amendment we're making has to do with site plan design requirements. We are proposing to make it more of a one-stop shopping kind of a experience, if you will, for developers. They'll be able to look in the zoning and get a lot of the stormwater design criteria for site plan projects. It's not that these don't exist in other areas, such as the stormwater ordinance or those kind of documents, but we just thought it'd be better to have them in the zoning, so everything's kind of located in one spot, and they'll remain in the other documents as well. So that's just kind of a rough overview of the cases before you. You will notice on the back of your agenda that there was one application that was denied. It was the LoJack Enterprises property on Old Nashville Highway. They were recommended denied by the Planning Commission for what they were wanting to do and have since withdrawn their application, so that will not be coming for your consideration. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. There is a budget amendment we do need to discuss as well, but I thought you probably wanted to consider this first.
Is there any questions on the?
I'll make a motion we approve as presented.
Second.
Okay, any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Okay, motion passes. Do we have a budget amendment?
Yes, ma'am. Just briefly, most of the money that you're seeing being moved in this amendment is money within our own budget being taken out of some line items to cover some others. These amendments are requested, you can see the explanation there. First is to pay out accrued leave for one of our employees who will be retiring effective June 30th. That'd be Miss Sue Young. She's one of our administrative assistants that handles a lot of our responsibilities as well as the septic tank and groundwater permitting processes. She's been a great person to work with. We're going to miss her, but we wish her well in her retirement. Also, it's going to provide some funding to fill her position, for someone new to fill her position and have 2 weeks of training additionally that work with Sue for those last couple of weeks while she's there, and they can have a little on-the-job training with her. Also, there's the payout again for her accrued leave. And those funds did come available because of, under our assistance line item, you'll know that Ms. Elizabeth Emsley, our assistant director, resigned. And so we did have some extra funding in that line item to cover that. The second amendment that you'll see there, I'm sorry, and there's also a little bit that covers some maintenance agreements with our copiers in our office. That'll cover us a little shortage that we had there. And then the second amendment that you see on the bottom, there's for some gasoline from the a different line item, not within our budget, but you see we're transferring $800 there. Also in that first amendment, I'm sorry, we did have a little shortfall in our board and commission fees for Planning Commission and BZA, and this, again, all that on that first amendment will all be taken out of existing funds in our budget. But the gasoline comes from a kind of a central pool of gasoline funds, so that's a little different, not from ours. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner? Commissioner Coyle?
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, that's all I have.
You should have on there, your iPad there, a TDOT agreement that they've sent for us on State Road 266 or Jefferson Pike. They're going to put up some flashing, it says in the agreement, flashing signs, school flashing signs think they're flashing lights, but anyway, I put this map out for you. You notice this is Jefferson Pike, and you see where Cutoff Road comes into it, and Ainge comes into. Ainge is the one that's built by Wilson School out there. That's where they're going to put those signs. And they've sent to us a contract for maintenance for those signs. With we agree to do the maintenance, which is customary. So I'm asking for permission for the mayor to sign these documents. In addition to that, I've talked to Murfreesboro. They normally do the maintenance on the electrical signs we have in the county, the stop sign, lights and stuff. And then if there's any cost, they send the cost to us, and we pay it out of a line item. It's in the mayor's budget. So we need a recommendation for the mayor to sign this agreement to put those flashing lights out there, and also we enter into an MOU with the city for do the actual maintenance on the lights, and for us to cover the cost of that maintenance.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I have one other item. This didn't get put on your pad. As we go through the budget process, there's money in OIT's budget to buy AutoCADs with a stormwater amendment to that, so we can model the stormwater stuff that comes in. Well, we were told for us to utilize this, and this is required by our stormwater ordinance, which is required by the state law, that we require as-built. Well, to do the as-built, you need to have the AutoCAD. But for us to use those, we even need to be able to have a machine that can run the AutoCAD. Well, our machines currently need to be updated to be able to run this program. So what we've done in the stormwater budget, this is for an upgrade for the stormwater computer only. We have some money in the planning budget to upgrade. There's 4 other computers need to be upgraded actually the first of the year for us to utilize this AutoCAD program. And so we're moving money around within the stormwater budget here to upgrade one of the computers during this fiscal year, so it won't be in next year's budget. So.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
All those in, call the roll, sorry.
Commissioner Allen,
Aye.
Commissioner Black,
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan,
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens.
Yes.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have building code support.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, the building permit activity for April last month was 276 permits. Fees taken in was $200 for plan review, $70,758 for permit fees. Plumbing permits was $10,065. Gas permits was $805 for a total of $81,828. The back of that report shows us where we are with this year compared to last year. 69 single-family dwellings this April compared to 45 last year. Total permits issued 276 compared to 171 last year. Our totals for the year on single-family, 218. We're up 73 single-family dwellings from last year's first months of the year, and a total of 156 permits with that 804 total permits issued. April was 69 single-family dwellings. That's the best month we've had in 6 years. Our average permits this year for the first 4 months is 54 single-family dwellings per month. So that's a very good average for us. Matter of fact, it's It's almost back to our average for the last 25 years. Our average for the last 25 years is right at 58 single-family dwellings. So we're getting really close to, with that number that we had last month, back to our average per month. Our next report is our zoning enforcements. Property management was 165 inspections performed for April. 13 inspections for BZA cases and conditional use permits. 43 signs pulled. And that total is 56 inspections in that category. 23 new cases and 31 closed cases. Our next report is our development tax collections. The Building Codes Department took in $139,500. The Planning Department took in $12,750 for a total of $152,250. To the right-hand side of the page is our total, $2,496,750. Skipping down to last year's total, $2,051,000, we've exceeded that and have a couple of more months to go. So hopefully our next couple of months will be good months also. And that's my report, Madam Chairman.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Highway Department, they did not have anything last month, from what I understand, so we'll move on to the landfill report. And solid waste. Mr. Nolan,
Good evening.
we'll do your report first, if that's okay. Do you have,
Okay. The landfill report, you can see the volume is down a little bit, and that's weather related. We just had a world of rain. Other than that, everything's about the same as we have been having. And we've got the convenience center report. Those loads are down as well because of all the rain we've had. On pretty days, they haul their trash out. On hasty days, they keep it and save it for us for later. So we'll probably have a busy weekend the next pretty weekend. Any questions?
okay, I think we need to go ahead and, I don't think we need to include the other part in the report. Okay, so we need to approve the report before we move on. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, we have a few guests with us tonight.
You want to do the budgets first? You want to do that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's up to you.
Yes, we need to do budget amendments. Are they on the iPad?
Are they on here? No.
I didn't,
Okay.
sorry, I didn't know you had any.
Budget amendment, we're gonna be short about $3,000 in the communication line item on the convenience center budget. So we're gonna move $3,000 from the maintenance and building repair line item to the communication line item. It's all within the same budget.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes. Okay, I know we've all had lots of questions over the past several months about landfill and things coming up from some community members having questions, and so we have invited Mr. Pat Flood, and Miss Meredith Benton is here tonight too. If you would like to, we can do this, you can stay there, or you can come to the table if you'd be more comfortable, whichever one you'd be more comfortable doing.
Come.
Okay.
hurt my back over the weekend, so.
Oh, and Mr. Majors is here too.
He can join. You can come up too.
You don't have to stay back.
Thought they were mad at me or something.
No.
Thank you for coming tonight and spending your time. I know that this is time away from your family, and so we really appreciate you being here to answer some of these questions. Before we get started, I'd like to just make a couple of comments. These were a lot of questions that came forward over the last month, and I believe there was, 28. And so it's a lot of information that we'd like to try to get through tonight. So in the interest of everybody's questions being answered and all the information getting to where it needs to be and out in the open, I would ask that maybe we can stay on task, and if we can go question by question, I think it would work a lot faster and quicker. And then what I'll do is I'll read the question and then kind of say out loud the responses that were made. I've got some responses on paper. Everybody has this loaded on their iPad. There's a document from the county and then a document from TDEC on your iPad, and you can toggle between both of those two documents. And then if you have more questions, you're more than welcome to ask those as well. But I'd really like for everybody to be able to get their questions answered. So, and I think that would be the fastest and quickest way to do that, because I know that we don't want to be here till 12 o'clock tonight, right? Okay, did you started to say something, Mr. Flood?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, just a quick overview and
Okay,
just
that'd be
introduce so
great.
y'all know who I am. As Tiffany pointed out, my name is Patrick Flood. I'm the director of the Division of Solid Waste Management for TDEC, and I work out of the Nashville Central Office in downtown Nashville. And I want to introduce Al Majors over here. He's the field office manager for the Division of Solid Waste out of the Nashville field office, and the Nashville field office is the field office that encompasses Rutherford County. And also with me is, Meredith Benton, who is the Director of External Affairs for the Nashville Field Office as well. And, you requested that we respond to those or answer those questions, and we were happy to do so. And I wanted to thank you for the invitation to go through. I don't know if you wanted me to, sounds like you want to read the questions, and that's fine. I can summarize the answers. Whoever, or if you just want to read the answers,
That
that's
sounds
fine
great.
too. Whatever you want
You
to
want
do.
to summarize? That would be wonderful.
I think I'm prepared to summarize.
Okay, good.
I may miss a detail or two, but we can
Okay, that's
catch
fine.
that in follow-up questions if y'all want.
Okay, that'd be great. One more thing I forgot to mention, we've got Commissioner Young is in the audience. And so, Commissioner Young, if you have questions or something, anytime, just stop me.
And I think we can wait till the end of
That would be,
very simple.
that would be wonderful. Just, if you need something, let me know. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
we also got Dr. Wells here that did perform the independent
Okay.
study on
Thank you for coming. Okay. Question number 1, is Rutherford County landfill in compliance with mandated regulations?
Yeah, and I'll answer that by breaking that into two parts. There's short-term issues that have been quickly corrected that have brought them into compliance, and those generally have to do with poor vegetation or erosional areas and things like that. And those, yes, absolutely, they're in compliance. Whenever we found an issue, it's been quickly corrected. There's been some longer-term concerns, specifically in regard to the groundwater, and that is it's really taking a lot longer to get the landfill back into compliance. So, and I'll be talking in more detail on that further down.
Okay.
But in general, yes.
Okay. Any other questions? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later, so we'll move on to the next one. Explain the inspection process and what is expected of the county. I think there's just some kind of confusion about why we're inspected, because at first it kind of sounds like we are not in compliance and we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, so that's why we're inspected so often. But if you could explain that for us, then I'd appreciate it.
Well, I can explain it by letting you know you're not being treated differently from anybody else. All landfills are inspected, and the regulations require different landfills to be inspected on a different basis. The closed one landfill is inspected minimum twice a year, and we do that, and that's required by regulation. The active Class 3-4 landfill is inspected once a quarter, and all 3-4 landfills are inspected once a quarter. Now, there may be an occasional follow-up inspection. If we identify, say, an issue with an erosional problem, we may come back out the next month to verify that it's been corrected. But again, all landfills would be treated that same way. So y'all are not being treated differently from any others.
I don't know if this might be a little bit further on, but does it kind of work the same way as health departments? Whenever restaurants are inspected, there's almost always something that's marked on the report, or do most landfills have nothing that's marked on the inspection report?
I've never worked for the health department, so it's hard for me to address, but it's common for landfills to have minor issues associated that require us to go back and verify that they've been corrected.
Okay, so we're not out of the ordinary on that part.
Fairly typical.
Okay. Since 2008, has Rutherford County made any progress on failed inspection issues? I think we've kind of addressed that a little bit.
Yeah, and on my comments I wrote see above, so we've y'all are doing fine.
We did say that a well needs to be repaired, and the other ones need to be evaluated.
Yeah, I think that's a specific question further down.
Okay.
So I'll
We'll come
address
back to it
that more
then.
specifically.
It has been reported by citizens that TDEC stated a lot of leachate is leaking into water. Was the statement made, and if so, please define a lot? What is a lot? Because that could mean, a cup or gallons.
Sure. Yeah, and this is really going to be one of the few questions that I'm going to spend a little time on, so please indulge me in that it was fairly difficult to provide a real concise question or answer to that question, mostly because you all have two different kinds of landfills. So I'm going to start by giving you a quick overview on what leachate is. Leachate, by definition, is any water that's come into contact with waste. Now, leachate is pretty variable. It can vary anywhere from something that's absolutely suitable to drink to something that's pretty nasty. So when I talk about leachate, it can vary quite a bit. It's a wide range of materials that I'm talking about. And you also have two different facilities. You have the Class 3-4 landfill and you have the Class 1 landfill. So I want to break that discussion apart as well and first talk about the Class 3-4 landfill. Class 3-4 landfills in Tennessee are not required to address leachate. It's not collected, it's not treated, it's not handled, it's not anything. They don't have liner systems, not required to have liner systems, not required to have leachate collection systems. So that's very different from the Class 1 landfills. And the reason that it's good public policy not to control leachate from Class 3-4 landfills is because generally, and really in almost all cases that I can think of, that the leachate that results from coming into contact with construction and demolition debris and brush and things like that, which go into Class 3-4 landfills, is very innocuous stuff. Not that there's not an environmental impact, but there's lots of environmental impacts for a lot of different things. Farmers put pesticides down on fields. There's negative environmental impacts from that. You have runoff from parking lots. Walmart parking lots are, for whatever reason, particularly bad. There's negative environmental consequences from that. And those sorts of things are not controlled either. And the reason they're not controlled is that the environmental damages associated with that are really not very considerable. There's no human health impacts at all, and there's very, very minimal ecological impacts associated with that. So it's not worth the cost and the money to control 3-4 construction demolition leachates. And it's not just the state of Tennessee that views that. I've worked in pretty much every state in the southeast before I came on board with TDEC, and to my knowledge, there's no states in the southeast that control class 3-4 leachates. But that's very different if you look at a class 1. A class 1 landfill is when we talk about landfills, normally that's the kind of landfills that we think about. They're the municipal solid waste, and those leachates can be pretty bad stuff. So we do require leachate collection. We do require leachate handling and treatment for class 1 leachate. So when we talk about is leachate, hitting the Stone River, to me it's a very different issue as to whether it's the class 3-4 leachate, which is not required to be controlled and no compelling environmental reason to do so, versus the class 1 leachate, which that's a bigger issue. That needs to be more tightly controlled. So anyway, jumping back to the actual question, it's a lot of leachate leaking into the water. First of all, I don't know that we were able to identify anybody that actually said that. So I'm not sure what that refers to. But if it's a class 3-4 leachate, yeah, there certainly would be some leachate getting into the groundwater and then presumably into the river because it's not controlled. But if it's class 1, that's a more serious matter. So
how's our class 1?
Well, it's closed. So theoretically, they shouldn't have any leachate, coming into it. So the idea in a closed facility is, and I'll talk about more, probably shorter now, a little later into this, but we want to put, a barrier across the top to divert stormwater away from the top of the landfill so that the water doesn't infiltrate into the landfill and create the leachate. So in my view, and I do speak for the division, that we need to be careful and make sure that everything is graded properly so that we divert the water away from the landfill so that it never becomes leachate. So if there are leachate breakouts coming out of the closed landfill, class 1 landfill, that's very problematic to me. We're very concerned about that. And if when the groundwater monitoring systems get squared away, if we begin to pick up some analytes that are indicative of class 1 leachate, we would be very concerned about that. So I'm a little uncertain. It sounds to me like there have been leachate issues, breakout issues. You know what I mean by leachate breakout, when it starts coming out the sides of the class 1, but it's my understanding that those have largely been corrected. We went through the records, and Al, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I don't think we've seen anything for the last 18 months or better because there's been some regrading work that has largely corrected that situation. So, but that's something when they go through the CAP evaluation that we'll be looking long and hard at that to make sure that that CAP is structurally sound and is going to do its job in diverting water away, because the way to solve the class 1 leachate problem is to keep it from forming in the first place. So I talked a long time. I hope there's an answer in there someplace.
So does that relate back to the wells? And if you'll forgive me, this is new to me. Trash is new to me. So does this relate back to our wells that one is working properly, but the other ones need to be reevaluated? Is that?
Well, it's all tied together because the monitoring well system monitors, the performance of the CAP at the landfill. So I can talk about that now, or if you want, I can talk about it when the question comes up in the question, whatever you would prefer.
Let's go ahead and do that.
Talk
While
about
we're
it
on
now?
it, let's go ahead and talk about it, and then when we get there, we'll say, oh, we're done with that.
Okay. One of the things that we had asked the county to do is to do really an assessment of the groundwater monitoring system. And inventory, I think, was actually the term that we used. And in my view, that there's two pieces associated with that well inventory. So first of all, you go and you look at the wells and verify that the wells are functioning properly and aren't broken. And it looks like at least one of the wells was in fact broken and not working. You want to look at the wells to make sure that they're not dry, which is indicative of that they're not placed in the right location. And you also want to verify that they're working in accordance with their intended function, that there's not silt in the middle of it, or there's not any blockage in the well casing that enables them to act the way they're designed to be performed. And I understand based on that, that at least one of the wells was identified as being broken. That'll have to be replaced. And some of the other wells had some blockage issue that required them to do a maintenance that's called redevelopment, where you actually kind of cleaning, for lack of a better term. So they need to be cleaned, and one needs to be replaced. The other piece to that is once you identify that everything is actually, physically sound and clean enough to work as it's intended to. The other thing that I wanted to have happen and that is being worked on right now is the well screen in the right location. If you have leachate that comes through the Class 1 landfill, it works its way through the waste and it hits the first groundwater. And that's the groundwater, which is the water table aquifer. That's the water that you want to be monitoring. And if you have your well casing too high, it'll be dry. You'll never get you're not monitoring. If it's too deep, you're monitoring water that's too far down. You're not monitoring the appropriate screen zone. So the second thing that we want to do is compare the monitoring well logs that says where these screen zones are and compare them against records that show where the water table is, just to verify that they're in the right location. And it's my understanding that evaluation is actually being done this week. And so based on that, we will, y'all will determine, and we will agree with, or not, that either the well system is fine as is, or it needs additional wells, or the wells are in the right location but at the wrong depth, or right depth, wrong location, or will assist in evaluating that to make sure that not only are they functional, but they're properly located.
So they're being evaluated this week. Okay.
Yeah, I forget what day the meeting's at, but
Friday.
but they're Friday. Okay, but they're going through all that to make sure that's all done and proper.
Okay, great. Explain any ongoing issues the county is working on.
Three major issues that I see. I've mentioned the cap evaluation. The best way to keep the Class 1 leachate from being generated in the first place is to prevent the surface water from getting into that, and a properly maintained cap is a way for that to happen. So they're looking at that. I've mentioned leachate breakouts, which they have had those in the past. Sounds like those have largely been controlled, and my expectation is if the cap is graded and drains properly, that should be ongoing. Actually, given all the rain that we've had of late, if there were going to be some leachate breakout problems, my thinking is you'd start seeing them pretty quick. So that sounds like good news. And the groundwater system, I think that needs more work, and we're in the process of evaluating that. And TDEC, rather than just kind of standing at arm's length on this, we're trying to be collaborative and trying to work towards a solution that's good for the residents of Rutherford County.
Great.
Are those decisions, after the meeting Friday, how quickly are those decisions implemented and put into working motion? You said that there'll be discussion Friday, or that those tests will be conducted Friday?
Well, I think what they're doing on Friday is that they're going through records
Okay.
to look at screen zones on the wells and look at the potentiometric surface maps and things like that, and to try to assess, is everything located at the right depth, is everything at the right location. I think what falls out of that is a determination that either, yes, the well system is fine, or no, the well system, we need something more, either more wells, or, well, I guess that would probably be the long and
Right.
short of it, more wells. How long it would take for you, from once we decide you need more wells, to actually put those wells, that tends to be kind of a county process. I'm not really sure
Right.
what the speed on that is.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there'd be an answer back Friday where we would know pretty quick if that's discussion that would need to take place first in this committee if decisions were made that there needs to be some corrections, or if the opposite side of that is everything would be acceptable and up to standard where we'd be able to move forward knowing that that was confirmed by the state and by the county working together.
Well, I think there'd be probably some agreement on Friday, and my guess is that the folks that are going to be doing that on Friday are going to have follow-up discussions with folks up the food chain, certainly on TDEC.
Sure.
You know, we want to make sure that we agree with what their assessments
Right.
are, and then, of course, there's 2 governmental agencies involved, so there'll be paperwork and documentation and stuff
Right.
like that. But I would think within a week to 2 weeks, all that would settle out.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was looking was by next meeting, if there were some decisions that were made, would we have some information in front of us before the next Public Works meeting? So that sounds like,
How often do you
hopefully,
meet?
we meet once a month, so we wouldn't meet, for 4 weeks, so that would be good.
To the extent that we have money already in the budget, we will use it in the appropriate way once we determine and come into agreement with TDEC.
Yeah. Patience is not numbered amongst my few virtues,
Sure.
so we would
quite
want to
right.
move sooner rather than
Okay.
later on.
Thank you.
Who's conducting the tests?
Well, there's not really tests
The
being,
evaluation? Who's conducting the
Um,
evaluation on Friday?
well,
TDEC, our environmental group Triad, and Rutherford County, the 3 of us together.
You said environmental group.
Triad is our
They're
environmental
consultants.
consultants.
Okay, that's who we pay.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
I'm hoping.
Let's see, we're on what, number 6?
I don't know. I lost
Possibility of
track.
fines.
Always a possibility. And I think I pointed out that I'm probably not the most patient man that ever walked the face of the earth. And these things have probably lingered a little bit, and so, but it sounds like what I'm hearing is everything is moving more quickly towards getting resolution on this. But if things stall, if things go wrong, we will write what's called a director's order. I write those on the director, and what we would do is we really have the duty and the obligation to write director's orders to force compliance. We almost always write contingent orders, which means if you don't do this, we will hit you up with a fine, because we don't really want the money. We just want you to do the right thing. But it's one of our tools, and we'll use it if we need to. But I'm not hearing anything that says we're going to have to. So, and I'd rather not. But push come to shove, we will.
I'd rather not too. What is the typical fine?
Well,
Probably depends on the
Violation.
yeah, they don't. If it's more than $50,000, it goes to the commissioner. So he has more fining capacity than I have, and I don't think I've ever written one for more than $45,000. So I bump up against it, but again, we're not trying to bankrupt the county, but we do try to get folks' attention.
All right, I think the next one really would be dealt with by Mr. Nolan, right? And then possibly we have our HR director, Ms. Stevenson. If you need to jump in, you can jump in. Of course you know. All right, do our county landfill employees have access to personal protection equipment, such as masks, gloves, reflective vests? And are they required to wear that?
They do have access to it. The only required PPE, personal protection equipment, is steel toe boots.
Okay, so where do we keep that? Is there a place
It's in the shop.
they can go and get it and, okay. Are landfills required to have eye wash or decon showers? And do we have these at our landfill?
We don't have them at our landfill.
They are not required.
They're not
But
required, okay.
They're not required as part of TDEC's regulations.
What about through OSHA? Do we know that?
OSHA requires requirements help me.
Decontamination.
Yeah,
Decontamination.
Thank you.
I got you.
On corrosive materials only.
Okay, I see it right here, sorry. And there are restroom facilities at the landfill too.
There it is.
Okay, how many landfill employees are, and how many landfills in the state, if we know this, employ an engineer that works on site during the operating hours? I know we don't, correct?
We
And
don't.
then, is that a typical thing that
Very common.
landfills?
We don't know of any operating class 3-4 landfill that has an engineer on site. I don't know of any. And we certainly would if there were, I believe.
When an engineer is needed, the county typically just contracts someone out?
That's typical.
Correct.
They would get it through their consultant. And,
Okay.
Yeah, Triad, I know, has engineering capabilities.
Okay. How many employees at the landfill are certified operators?
One.
That's you,
Mhm.
right? And are employees required to go through training on landfill operations prior to beginning work? And do they understand the materials that are allowed at the site?
Yes. We're construction demolition material, so it's pretty obvious to look and see what kind of demolition comes in. And then they're also instructed to look for any hazardous type stuff, the chemicals you'd see under your kitchen sink, that type of stuff, tires, batteries, and televisions, those type of things.
Paint?
Yes, we don't take paint either.
What kind of training do they go through? Is it just like a...
It's on-the-job training, but it's a lot of it's just really common sense. You look at this stuff, if it's concrete and wood and brush, shingles, that type stuff, that's normally what we take.
Metal, get metal in there too.
Sometimes. And then, so, you look at what it is, and then you try to get out what's not there, and then you get the hauler, let them know that, hey, we can't have this.
So does that hauler then have to take it away with them, and then they take care of getting it out?
That's our
or-
common practice. And then sometimes if they get it dumped out and you don't see it until after you start pushing the load and the hauler's already gone, then we have to deal with it.
Okay. And at that point, is it heavy equipment that gets it out, or do we get down there and just get it out?
You
with our
use the
hands
heavy
and-
equipment to get it out of the way. That way you're not working
Okay.
in the trash itself, and then you can get it picked up from there.
Okay.
And do we record who brings loads in so that if you had somebody who brought something they shouldn't, you could go back on them or contact them and say, hey, don't bring this again, or it's your responsibility to come deal
Right.
with it or something?
If you dump something there that you're not supposed to, and we don't see it
Mhm.
until after you're gone, then you'll get a phone call.
So you do track who's dumping which loads?
Ours is not busy enough to not be able to do that.
Well, you out there supervising mostly this one during the tornadoes in the past, was you out there visually supervising all the debris and all that come in up there?
I was supervising a lot of it, and a lot of the times I was in the scale house helping with the tickets and things like that.
You stay out there pretty regularly?
No, I stay in town most often.
Do you? Okay. Would you consider this your primary responsibility or your least responsibility as far as this landfill?
The landfill and the convenience centers both are primary responsibilities.
Okay, I want to point out too that on your iPad you have the questions answered by the county. The landfill rules of operations for employees have been included. Ms. Stevenson, you want to just quickly go through do you remember, can you briefly go through that, or?
Well, what do you want to
Was
know
that number
specifically? I mean, these are
No,
the-
just quickly.
The county has an employee handbook, which goes through the steering committee and approves the rules for all the county population. It's not uncommon for a department to have what we call SOPs, or departmental procedures, that are something that are specifically related to what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. So the landfill has some of those policies in place as well, as does the convenience centers. Most of these are just, reporting structures, time to be at work, days of hours of operation, how to report an accident. They're just very general. Who can use the equipment, who should not be using the equipment, how to do purchases, talks about, because they do have fuel and oil and things like that, how to log those items, where the keys should be kept for safety and security, how to log use of the equipment and the vehicles. So it's really just items that are specific to the department. And these were gone over at a meeting sometime back, and then as new people come on, we cover those with them as well.
I know at the sheriff's office, when you're an employee, you get a handbook. Do we have a handbook at the landfill that the employees get, or is it just a county?
County has an employee handbook, and then the convenience center has a rule book.
Okay.
The landfill does not have that.
Okay. All right, is it required for a landfill employee to oversee dumping every time someone dumps at the site? And I think we've already kind of briefly discussed that. How do we ensure that only permitted items are dumped?
Just looking at the loads.
Is there somebody out there all the time that,
Most all the time, that, we're not required to observe every load as it hits the ground, but when you push the load to bury it and then walk it in, that's when you're looking at it. So you actually do see your stuff.
okay. Is that pretty in line with regulations across the board, or?
Yeah, and in the way we verify compliance is through the inspections. You know, when we are out there to do the inspections, we also verify that we don't see any materials in the landfill that it's not permitted for. So that's
Okay.
how that works.
Is there anyone on site that has had safety training such as first aid or CPR or something
No.
like that happen? Just a suggestion might be a good idea.
We have first aid kits and things like that available, but we don't have first responders.
Okay. It's not, I mean, it's not difficult to get the training, you know, it's a half of a day and you get basic first aid and CPR. I try to keep mine up on my Girl Scout leader. You always gotta be prepared, right? Yes, ma'am.
The county does offer that,
Okay.
CPR and first aid training, and we do that usually annually, but sometimes we offer it a couple of times, and it's conducted at the health department, and usually we bring in an outside private individual, or the ambulance service has done that for us in the past. It is something that is offered, but the employee just has to sign up for it, so it's at their, it's not mandated, but it is offered.
Okay. Okay. I just think it's a good idea for every work site to have somebody that, especially when you're dealing with such things where you can, trash. I mean, you never know what can happen.
But the employee would be required to take off their own time though, right, to do that? Is it offered during the workday, I would assume, or is it offered outside of regular work hours, where if an employee wants to do that, they can do it in the evening?
We've done it both ways.
Okay.
We've done it both ways, and I think the last time was in the evening because it was just easier. We're public service offices, so naturally they need to be there when the public hours are open. So we do, I believe last time, and I'm just recalling, but I'm pretty sure that the ambulance service did the last one after hours, but
Okay.
I can't remember, specific.
No, that's okay.
I'm pretty sure
I
that's
just
right.
I'd imagine it'd be hard for people who want to take off 4 or 5 hours and not get paid for that if we didn't offer it, at less than peak hours for the employee.
It might be a good idea just to have somebody designated and say you're the safety person for us. You're a regular employee, but you're going to be our safety person, and then, send them on county time. I mean, because I think first aid is that important. We want to make sure that somebody doesn't get their arm, a big gash and not know how to stop the bleeding or something like that. So,
And I think you have a lot of workplaces that have some sort of first responder training. It's like when an emergency happens, you know who to go to, whether they're just a layperson with additional training or whatnot. But yeah, I would think, being the type of work that this is, that I would have probably at least 2 people, so that on any given shift, if somebody's got the day off or whatever, you could have somebody that would be a first responder.
I know when my mom worked at Nissan, she was the safety person, and she was just a regular employee, line person, a technician. And that was all, they'd have safety trainings every now and then. And then also they were the designated person that if somebody saw something that was unsafe, then they could go to that person and say, hey, I'm not sure about this, can you check it out? And so you just have somebody designated for that.
How many you got working up on that?
Got 2 county employees and 2 contracted employees.
I really that would be a little hard to do, but something to look at. Okay.
The cover, does TDEC inspect our covering, what we cap with, or do they just rely on us?
At the final cover?
The cover, the cap part?
Yeah, well, there's construction documentation reports that are generated. We do have people that do visits during the construction to verify that things are being done correctly. But for details, we would normally rely on the construction quality control report that would have the detail and direct measurements or survey measurements, that sort of thing, that documents the fact that the sufficient cover has been placed.
Was our capping sufficient? Covering?
That's what we worked on all last summer, is go back and regrade it for the settling over the years.
Yeah, but that's kind of a different issue. So let me make sure I'm being clear, because I may have answered the question you didn't ask.
Well, I think you did.
Okay.
Okay. What number are we on? Number 13. Employees required to have bloodborne pathogen training. I think this would probably really might be a good idea for, I mean, in the school system, we have to watch a video every year.
And we have training at
So the
For all
convenience
employees.
center
We have,
employees
yeah.
as well.
the risk management department comes in and does that for us.
Okay, what's included in that? Just
They do, we spend a half a day on that. Some kind of health training, and we talk about policies, procedures, and county rules and all. It's a 4-hour morning.
So if they don't come to the training, what happens?
In the past, we've done 2 trainings to try to catch everybody, but we've still missed a few. I mean, it's still possible for somebody to have missed it for a year.
Okay, it's inevitable.
One of the things we also do is we print off a PowerPoint presentation, and there's a quiz at the end. And what they do, what we've done in most departments is if somebody has missed the in-person training, they've looked at the PowerPoint presentation and read through the PowerPoint and then taken the quiz and submit that so that we have a log that they've taken the training. Now, somebody still could be missed, whether they're out on leave or vacation or whatever, but we do try to capture everybody in that.
Is that for the whole county?
Mm-hmm.
Should be following up somewhere in that department, what we do, make sure that all of the everybody that's missed, we keep a record, and go back and when they do get there, work it in, and send a copy to them.
Are employees required to have household hazard training? So I think that really just kind of goes back to, on the wrong page here. The training, you know, about what can go into the landfill and what can't. I think an idea about it was like meth lab type issues, or you know, if you see somebody dumping stuff that can be a red flag, can they recognize that those are red flags, and who to contact? Or
You got 2 different issues there. Most of the meth lab type things that you would see don't come to our landfill. They do come to the convenience centers. And most of the time, that's in a trash bag, and it's hard to be identified if it's in a trash bag.
okay.
So what happens to it?
If it's in the trash bag, nobody sees it, it winds up at the landfill.
You don't never know.
It go in a trash compactor and get packed up.
Okay, TB testing, do all the employees get hepatitis shots?
They have the option to take them. They're not required to.
Okay, what other kind of health things do we do for them as a county?
They have the option to take the hepatitis series if they choose to. It's totally up to them. And other than that, that's about all. We've got some gloves and steel-toe shoes and things like that.
Okay. Is there pre and post exposure testing that can be done? I mean, you obviously just said we don't do it, but is that a typical thing that landfill employees get, or?
We don't. In the industry that I came from, most of the pre and post was on the medical waste side for radiation and things like that.
Okay.
Don't all new employees get a TB test, or do they not?
The only ones that get are people who are in areas, landfill would be one, solid waste, our correctional facilities, those type, anybody who deals with children, those type individuals, and it is offered, but we can't mandate that somebody take a hepatitis B or a TB test, but we offer, and then they have a checklist they can accept or deny. If somebody denies it and then says later on, you know, I've been in here and I see what goes on now, and maybe I would like to protect myself, we can always go back, and the county pays for that. It's a 3-shot series, and we set those up and we do offer them to them. So if they decide at a later date they want to take them, that they can.
So we can't require a screening test initially, because how do you know somebody's not bringing TB with them?
We don't have that screening in place. I mean, we don't do a pre-employment physical, I think is probably what you're.
No, I just know there's other companies that I've worked for where you had to take a TB test. I mean, it was just part of, you know, you're showing up. You know, before you get your paycheck, fill out your paperwork, here's your social security number, and get a TB test.
We don't do that. That's not been a common practice for us. If they do want to take the testing, of course we do that. If they think that they want the testing, or that they may have had it before and they're not sure, we can do a titer for that as well. But we don't, it's not mandatory. And I'm sorry, I can't answer why it's not mandatory.
But from an HR standpoint, could we make it mandatory that they take it since we're offering it anyway?
I would have to check. I think there's a question along the lines that may be a legality of it as being a public employer. And I know that risk management handles these and keeps up with who actually takes the hepatitis and TB shots, because that is required that we maintain those logs for OSHA. So I do know that the logs are maintained, but I don't know, I mean, I'll be happy to get back with you, but I don't want to say, you know, why we don't, because I don't know, but I will check on that for you.
Okay, thanks.
What would be the benefits of testing everybody for TB beforehand? I'm sorry, it's probably a stupid question, but.
Well, just like she says, you know, if somebody comes in with TB already, then they're not infecting the population.
Yeah.
They're also not being a hazard or a safety risk to a citizen who may come into one of our offices or, you know, participate in one of our programs. So then they're not being, but I'm not sure.
I mean, it makes,
Not
to me, it makes
educated enough
complete
on
sense
that
in the
to
school
tell.
system, once again, I'm background
As your
education,
children.
but, I'm, you know, on the surface, I don't know from a landfill perspective.
One thing that, coming from the private industry, we do pre-employment physicals for anybody dealing with hazardous materials. Even though this is a C&D landfill and you're not dealing with hazardous materials, there's a lot of dust and debris in the air and whatnot. The only way we can guarantee these employees can't come back on us is do a pre-employment physical to make sure they have no issues beforehand, because whatever can happen, they can turn around and sue us and say, hey, it happened out here on the landfill. So the only way you can do it is have a pre-employment physical beforehand. Now, I don't think you need to go as far as a hazardous materials technician where you have to have an annual physical, but you have to have that pre-employment physical and post. It might not be law, it's just common sense practice. And I think you were saying that, you know, with the TB test, it just kind of goes along with it. I mean, there's a thing in OSHA called the general duty clause, which is basically anything common sense you're supposed to do is what OSHA requires. So OSHA might not have a little step-by-step for everything you do. A reflective vest, that's general duty clause. If a bulldozer operator backs over the other bulldozer operator and they're not wearing reflective vests, guess who they're coming back on? The county. It's common sense stuff. That's the general duty clause. That's what OSHA requires. Safety glasses, masks, and I think that's what a lot of this is. And unfortunately, this TDEC doesn't really have. This isn't really what they're about. That's more of an OSHA issue, but it's just that's what it is. It's the general duty stuff, and that's. I just want to kind of clarify that because a lot of these things are kind of redundant that y'all been talking about. So.
So what would be the pre-testing, pre-health employment?
Well, on that, we have the on-the-job injury program, and we also have the on-site clinics, which the on-site clinics is a little bit unique for Rutherford County outside of, private employers or also other municipalities. One of the things that is different for us also is, well, it's not different because workers' comp does the same thing. If somebody has an injury while at work, and they go in and say, I need treatment, one of the things that they do is they have to sign a release for their medical records. At that point, you would know if it's a pre-existing condition because that would be determined through your medical records. So, the point, and again, I don't know, whether it's requirement or allowed, I don't have that information with me, but when there is an injury involved, along the lines of what Commissioner Young was talking about, the employee's medical history would be turned over then to the physician, the treating physician, and they would know whether or not it was a pre-existing condition prior to the injury, because they would have had treatment if they'd had treatment. That's if they had had treatment in the past. So I can't answer whether or not we could mandate it.
But then again, sometimes we have, sometimes we don't know it, so.
That's what I said. If they had been treated, we would know, but if they hadn't been treated, we would not know. You're right.
And then again, you don't know what exposure they might come across that they don't even know throughout the year, If asbestos got dumped in the C&D landfill, which there's a possibility it could be, it's construction debris. I'm not saying there is or there isn't, but if they breathe that in, it's gonna be a long-term effect. It's not gonna be something that happens overnight. And that's, we have a duty to protect our people. And that's again, the general duty clause. That's what it's the common sense catch-all that OSHA always gets you with at the end if you're not doing those common sense things. So a mask, that's, if we're not making them wear them, that's just
I
kind
think
of.
we're sort of getting off track here. Let's get back on actual landfill stuff.
Okay, outside contracted employees that work at the landfill.
They have their equipment and we have our equipment. They use theirs and we use ours.
Okay.
Here, the answer to this question is, can non-county employees operate county vehicles? And the answer here is yes?
No.
No. Gotcha. The first part of the question was, yes, we do have them. I'm sorry, I didn't read far enough along. No, county employees only operate county equipment. Got it. Thanks.
Okay, when is the last OSHA inspection that the landfill had?
As far as we can tell, there's never been an OSHA inspection at the landfill. We had a TOSHA inspection a few weeks ago, but not an OSHA.
Okay.
How'd that go?
It went pretty well. Of course, with any inspection, they're gonna look and see what they can find.
That's their job.
Some signage issues and nothing major.
Did they address any of the work safety police issues that we've been discussing?
The CPR first aid thing, if you don't have designated responders, you're not required to have somebody trained on the site.
Okay.
And then the personal protection equipment is basically what we deem necessary for the job. We've got the stuff available, but we don't require it.
Gotcha. And that's probably what they wanted to know is just, is it there? Do they have the option to use it? Okay.
MSDO sheets, are they available at the convenience centers as well as the county landfill?
Yes.
Is that something that's recently been?
Yes, that's something that we've recently done. Now, we've got them at most of the centers. Now, we may not have them at all of them yet, but we will have them by the end of next week.
Okay.
What kinds of chemicals do they use at the convenience centers?
Fly bait, hydraulic fluid, rubbing alcohol, neosporin, very few things like that.
Okay. Gypsum. The question is, what are the issues regarding gypsum, potential hazards? some regulations regarding its disposal on a landfill and/or cleanup of the product.
Well, gypsum can be, can and is disposed in Class 3, 4 landfills under the right set of circumstances, which normally includes moisture and some biological actions. It's an odd series of activities that results in this, but you can have H2S odors. It's theoretically possible, and I do know, I've worked in a number of facilities throughout the southeast, and there are C&D landfills that have H2S odors. H2S, if y'all know what H2S is, that's the rotten egg odor. It's awful, and people are very sensitive to it at very low levels. You will not like it at very, very low levels. And in my experience, and I've talked to the solid waste program manager, and he has confirmed that that's consistent with his experience, is that in the rare landfill that is beset by that, it's just at the nuisance level. At high enough concentrations, H2S is dangerous. It can be poisonous, but it would, neither he nor I knew of any landfills where the levels had gotten that high. But we did know of situations where it had become just an enormous nuisance, and that the workers hated it and the neighbors hated it. And I know of at least one facility where we've actually had to go in and install a active gas extraction system to pull the H2S gas out to control it, to keep the to keep the situation tolerable. And that's what you would have. It would be a nuisance issue, and if it was a really bad nuisance issue, we would require the installation of an active gas extraction system, which the difference between an active and a passive is an active system pulls the gas out there and keeps it from migrating out.
Do we have any of those type issues in our county?
I don't know. You guys, you would know it pretty quickly. It's unusual to have those issues.
Okay, the wells. We talked a little bit about this already. I think, did anybody else have any other questions about the wells? The monitoring wells? I think we...
I had one quick question, Madam Chair. So when you mentioned that one of the wells was broken and didn't appear to be functioning, do the other wells still pick up that area that well was responsible for? Kind of how does that work as far as if one of the wells is broken, are the others functioning enough where they might register unsafe drinking water or unsafe levels of some sort of contamination, or how does that work?
Well, it's possible. I mean, if you think about a monitoring in like a square or something like that, and this point goes away, you can miss stuff that's coming through.
Right.
So it's a problem. It needs to be corrected.
Okay.
So I would not want to rely on the other wells being having the capacity to pick up something. I would want to see that monitoring well replaced.
Now,
Thank you.
how should we have caught that before? How and when should we have caught that a well was not working?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. Going back through the records, it's clear from the monitoring well records that there were issues associated with that, and I will take some blame for the division that we probably should have required it to be replaced sooner. So, I can't address. I've been on board since August, so I'm relatively new to TDEC, so I can't really say historically how we got to this point, but TDEC should have required that well to be replaced. So
because I'm always less interested in blame than I am about going forward in prevention. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in is, should another well go bad, how and when will we know that the well is bad, and how will we correct it more quickly?
Well, when you can't pull samples out of it, that's pretty quick evidence that it's.
And we pull those.
There's
Who pulls them?
Your consultants come out and pulls the samples, and when you can't get a sample out of that well, that's pretty clear evidence that
And they
there's a
sample
problem.
every well every time, or?
Yes.
Okay.
That's in your network. There may be other wells or piezometers that are, outside of the required network, but I don't think you have any of those. Other wells you have out there are being sampled, is that right?
We don't have any piezometers anymore. The 6, actually 7 groundwater wells should be monitored, should be sampled every quarter.
So Triad should have caught that?
No, not Triad. Southern Consultants has
Okay.
been doing that. It's a different
Okay.
group.
Okay. I just want to make sure, if we don't have a safety measure in place, like Commissioner Turner was talking about, and there's an area that goes unmonitored, I want to make sure we catch it as quickly as possible. So,
And TDEC will send you reminders that it needs to be replaced and much quicker than we seem to have done in the past.
okay.
Thank you.
That kind of goes along with the question I have, Mr. Flood. Being that well's been,
Commissioner Young, I'm sorry, could we have Commissioner Young come up? Sure. Here, sorry.
That's a good idea, thank you.
I want everybody to be able to hear you on TV too. Thank you.
the question I have is really about, with that well not working, I don't know how long it's not worked, but I know we've had numerous, I go through compliance letter and compliant letter. What is the satisfactory time frame from TDEC for us to fix something like that? I mean, if we've been getting these letters stating that's not been working, and what is your satisfactory time frame for kind of the general industry on us fixing that kind of stuff?
Well,
Because my concern is we've had $3 million in fund to fix it for a while, and it's not an issue of not having the money, because we have the money. What is your time frame of us getting it done so we know?
Well, I think as soon as we realize we have a problem, we want you to start moving to fix that. How long that takes, I'm a little uncertain, because a lot of that has to do with the internal workings of Rutherford County, and I don't know that, but I would like to see some action on that, and I think we're finally seeing some action on that. So, we're making progress on that, but I would have thought that if that well had been identified as being bad a while back, that within, several months, that we would see some real progress towards getting that replaced.
The other concern I have is, and I'm not saying we are, but when you have it on site and you can do it, it doesn't look good. And we have stuff that we can pour down these wells that can alter the results in ViraPlug, and I know y'all are aware of that. There's stuff we can pour down these wells and change the results of the water, because that stuff cleans the well out when you drill the well. Do all landfills keep that on site, or is that something that?
I've never heard of EnviroPlug being used. Is that okay, it's a powdered bentonite product? I would not suggest putting that down wells.
Well, it's on site, and I know you can put it down the well and clean the well and alter your results. And I know that's something, if y'all are coming and testing the results, I don't want it to be on site to where somebody could say we're using it or not using it, or.
Yeah, the proper use of bentonite is for a sanitary seal around the annulus of the well. You ought not be putting it down the center of the well, so don't do that.
I understand that.
The bentonite we have out there is for the leachate outbreaks, to put in the ground, to try to seal that and then put the dirt on top of it.
Yeah, what you want to do with wells is make sure that they're clean, and that you have a gravel pack adjacent to the screens, and then a layer of bentonite in the annulus to keep the screen separated from the materials above. But yeah, I've never heard of bentonite being put down wells in an attempt to clean them. I don't think that's a good practice.
I've got a couple other questions, but I want to make sure that you don't have another subject first, or is this?
What are they on the wells or?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. My other
Go
question.
ahead and get through his questions. We'll be
Okay.
through.
By not being in compliance with the wells and the leachate outbreak over a certain period of time, and it's a considerable amount of time, this isn't a 3-month thing, this has been ongoing since before Mr. Nolan was the solid waste director. So there's blame to be shared along down the line. Has the county violated the Clean Water Act?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And then how many times can we be out of compliance on the exact same issue? Well, I guess, and that's kind of what you were going to talk about, the fine and the director's order. I mean, what is the level there before? Because I don't want to get to that point. I want to make sure that whatever we can do, let's throw all the money at it. Let's get the engineer in. Let's get the solid waste director.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what we need to do and solve it. But I want to make sure we're not near that threshold.
Right, and, you know, I'm about, and I've said this at many talks, the measure of our success as TDEC is the number of facilities in compliance, you know, not the fines that we're writing, not the NOVs that we're writing. So, you know, what happened in the past, I've only been on board since August, so I've not done a lot of research on that. But since I've been here, we have made significant strides towards getting back into compliance. And, you know, as long as we continue to keep making those strides, and, you know, within the next 3 to 6 months, if we get ourselves a compliant groundwater monitoring well network in place, you know, I'm fine with that. If it gets to the point where suddenly we're not making any more progress and stuff's being stretched out, and I feel like y'all aren't trying very hard anymore, and you're just going into delay, or you're not, you know, you don't have good intentions, and you're not working hard at it, then I have other tools to encourage you to fall into compliance, and I haven't hesitated to use those tools in the past, and I won't in this instance either.
And my final question is, compared to other C&D landfills and closed class ones, because, you know, there's discrepancies there, how are we, Rutherford County, doing compared to, and Mr. Majors, I know this is your area too, so you might know more about the immediate area. How are we doing as far as compared to other landfills in the area? How do we respond to issues compared to other landfills? Are we doing it satisfactory the way they would do it, or are all landfills, is it bureaucracy that slows it down? What's the, and feel free, all three of y'all, I don't know how you, comparing us to, you know.
You want to tackle that one?
Well, I'll comment by saying it's probably not fair to try to compare landfills, because each landfill is different, especially when you look at private landfills and commercial landfills. So I guess the equalizer would be the inspector that sees different facilities. And in his mind, he has to gauge the facility based on its permit and the regulations. And you know, I don't know that I can answer your question, just to be honest about it. I think comparison is probably not going to give you the information you're looking for, okay. Number one. But then how do you get to the place where you want to be? The inspector goes to the facility. He takes we call it a snapshot when he does that inspection out, but he sees those few hours he's there, and he writes that up on a checklist that says these things were either right or wrong, and then he hands a copy of that checklist to whoever the attendant is and says, we need you to fix these in 30 days, 60 days, whatever. Comes back and does another inspection to see if those issues have been addressed. And that typical process happens at every landfill in the state of Tennessee. So, you know, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I answered your question or not, and that's probably because I'm not sure I can. Does that make any sense?
I understand. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. I just was trying to gauge, are we being satisfactory to everybody else, you know, as far as the way we're handling it. And I know that's a big difference because we are the government versus republics of private industry, and they're totally different than, I mean, it's the same regulations, just the way private business works is so much quicker than government on anything.
Maybe the best way to look at it is when the inspector comes out, if he sees an issue he wants addressed, he comes back and checks to see, has that been addressed? If it has, we start all over. If it hasn't, then he makes a comment, or we have, on our inspection checklist, we have 2 categories of violations, V1s and V2s. And it's like that because we understand that it's a big job to run a landfill. So we're probably going to see something that needs to be addressed. And if it's, you know, if it's a small deal, it's a V1. If it's a big deal, it's a V2. So if we I don't do that many inspections, but if somebody does an inspection, they check a V1 on a checklist. They come back in 2 weeks, 30 days. If that's been corrected, we say thank you and we move on. If that V1 is there 3 or 4 times in a row, then that's, you know, the severity level goes up. Maybe a V2, and we might send a letter. So does that help at all?
It does. And some of this I know, I want the committee to know. And you probably did a whole lot more explaining on the inspections than I think any other question right there as far as the way, but which is good. And I want to thank this committee and Commissioner Phelps for letting me come up here and speak. And that's all I have. And I appreciate y'all coming and spending your time. And I hope that as a group we can collectively do what's right and hopefully answer these citizens' concerns and make sure that we're not doing anything we're not supposed to, and make sure that we're doing everything we can to take care of that water right there, because that is where my drinking water comes from, 300 yards downstream. So I appreciate y'all. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, are there areas of leachate pooling around the landfill and environmental concerns, if there are?
Well, yeah, the pooling sounded to me like the ponding. I would use the term ponding on the top of the landfill that occurred after it settled. So what I've seen is that has happened in the past and has largely been corrected. That's what the records indicate, and that's what I'm hearing from my folks.
Okay.
Now,
And
you're asking, if you're not careful, you're going to get confused on groundwater monitor well and leachate well, 2 different things. We
Yeah.
have one leachate well, and it's on the Middle Point side of the landfill. We go up there and manually turn it on. We pump leachate into a tank that's graduated, so we can tell how many gallons in it, and it gravity flows to next door. On an average month, it's about 1,000 gallons a month comes out of there.
Is it working properly?
Mhm.
It is?
Yeah. And on then we've got a request in for a minor modification to do an additional temporary well on the other side of the landfill to collect leachate. Now, those are different from groundwater monitor wells.
We ain't had no trouble out of the one pumping over to Republic.
No, it still works. We just
It
turn it on.
works good? Okay.
okay, what is the risk of a hill blowing out due to the pressure on that side?
And I took that question to mean from gas pressure building up. And I know of no landfills that have kind of blown out from pressure. The landfill gas kind of works its way out through, through wherever it can, wherever there's a, defect in the cap or along gas vents and things of that nature. So I know of no instances where that's occurred.
Okay, runoff. Is there an issue with runoff at the landfill? And is the pond operating properly?
Well, and I actually had to call Frank, about that. He's the man that does the bulk of the inspections out there. And, it looks like that the said pond is getting to the point where it probably needs to have some maintenance done on that. So Frank had said that, yeah, it's getting close, and that's probably going to be mentioned in the near future on the inspections report. So I guess I'm giving you a heads up on that. We're getting to that point.
So, do we have money to do the maintenance? And
We've got actually 4 said ponds, and 2 of them have been cleaned out since I've been here. One of them was fairly new when I got here. The said pond that Frank's speaking of is the one when you go in the landfill on the left of the drive. That's the one that collects most of the sediment if it washes off the landfill. But that's what the sediment pond is for, is to collect that sediment before it gets out into the water supply.
so it's almost ready to be cleaned.
Mhm.
And now we know. In previous years, 2010 in particular, is there any money appropriated to fix leachate issues, and what's the status of that project?
We've always had money appropriated to fix the issues at the landfill. In the budget process, there's always money for any of the fixes that need to be repaired.
we had to use any of it in the last couple of years? We used any of it?
Yeah, well, it's not in, most of those type of repairs are in the contract labor line items, because they're the ones that we had to come in and actually do the type work, but yes, we've used it every year.
So each year, we always put money into the line item, and then most years, you said most years it gets spent.
Not all of it normally gets spent, but we do spend some of it.
And how many igniters are currently working at the landfill, and is there any out of service?
It looks like most of them were in service, but I question whether, I mean, do they burn consistently? I just can't, I just can't imagine. That landfill is so old, I cannot imagine it's generating much in the way of methane. Landfills generate methane as a result of the breakdown of what they call, putrescibles, which is food waste, banana peels, all that kind of stuff. And, after a while, all that stuff breaks down, turns into methane and carbon dioxide, and it's gone. And after 20 years, I'm really surprised there's a meaningful amount of methane left in that landfill to even burn off. Of all the things that could be addressed and have time spent looking at, and this probably goes to question 26 as well. That's not the kind of thing that I'm too worked up about, just because the waste is so old. I just can't imagine it's generating much in the way of gas anymore.
Okay. So if one doesn't work, then what happens to the gas?
It just escapes through the atmosphere.
And then
Still
what kind
ends
of
off.
concerns do we have over that?
TDEC doesn't have any. It's not required to be controlled. The only landfills that require gas control are the much larger facilities, 2.5 million cubic meter size facilities that fall under a certain set of regulations called the NSPS. The smaller landfills typically don't even try to burn the off. They just put a well and a little gooseneck on it so that it vents to the atmosphere, and that's fine. There's a little bit of methane. It dissipates quickly. On rare occasion, there will be something that causes an odor issue, in that the odor gets to be a nuisance issue. So sometimes you have to flare a well if there's odors coming out of that. But even then, on a 20-year-old landfill, I can't imagine you making much in the way of odor at this point. So I'd rather you sink your money into the well network.
Okay. And there was one more issue. The box storage for the private haulers, is that currently, well, you go ahead and explain that.
We've got a lot of containers up there that belong to us. And our containers that are up there are either to be repaired, in process of being repaired, or have been repaired. And that's what we use on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, to try to keep the convenience centers open. That's where we have our swap boxes. And then we've got, recycled containers up there that we've moved around and got those in various stages of repair. What this question is asking is private haulers that come in and dump, use as customers, or customers, do we allow them to leave boxes up there? And the answer is yes, we do.
If we didn't, where would they keep them?
They would have to take them back to wherever they generate their loads from. The advantage to the hauler is if they're coming in and dumping a load, and then they have their next customer, they go get that load and they don't need that container back. That's the last haul for that customer. That previous load, they'll leave that container at our landfill. They'll go get that other next customer that's finished, bring that one and dump it. We'll wind up one container left at the landfill. And then as they need them, they'll come back and get them.
Is that typical the way that other landfills across the state
Some do
work,
and some
or
don't. It just depends on the landfill.
The ones that don't, how do they do?
Like Middle Point, I talked to them quite often and asked them if they allowed it. And they said, no, we don't have it. But if we had a very large customer that required it, we would make them a spot to put it in. But they don't have them. While the other places, the smaller landfills do.
Does anybody have any other questions or concerns
Could I
we didn't hit?
chime in on one last item? And I can't remember who made the point, but they made the point that about the water quality in the Stones River, and that's a source of drinking water. And I do want to point out that although my division is Division of Solid Waste, we work in conjunction with the Division of Water Resources. And the Division of Water Resources has done an evaluation of the Stone River, and really across its length, and has not found any impairment to the river at all. And I further asked the Division of Water Resources people, apparently that there's 3 different locations where water is being pulled from the Stones River for drinking water supply. And so I asked if there was any statistical variation between the 3 locations that might be indicative of there being any changes to the water quality in the Stones River. And they said no. Statistically, they were identical. So it sounds like the Stones River is not being impaired by the Lanesfield's activity. That said, we want to do everything we can to get the well system fixed and everything into compliance, but there is some evidence that the Stones River is not being impaired.
Okay. And you received the copy of Dr. Wells's report, and somebody in the office or in the water. I'm sorry, you know what I'm trying to say, right? Somebody's looked over it and.
Yeah, and I myself looked over it. My deputy director of field operations has looked through it, and we also forwarded a copy to the Division of Water Resources to get them to look at it as well. So, and I've provide Dr. Wells, my comments on it, and so that's. I guess, the bottom line on the report is that it picks up some variations in the water, but not anything that I would describe as ecological harm or human health risks or anything like that, just variations.
So what causes the variations?
We don't really know. It could be that there, just kind of changes in the water quality. It could be that they're picking up some impacts from the class 3-4 leachate, which is not controlled. I'm not really sure what the variations would result from. I'm hoping that when the Division of Water Resources finishes their review, they may have some more specific thoughts on that.
And can they send the report to the county so that we can see what their review is?
I can ask.
I'll make that request to them.
If you could do that, that'd be great.
Thank you.
I guess it's, they do ongoing testing regularly, so it's almost annually. They are testing the Stones River and doing biological and chemical testing of the Stones River. So it's not like it's just one report. It's something that's ongoing. Would it be helpful to have their last report? I think they tested in the fall of 2012.
That would be great.
Okay.
Well, Tiffany, weren't you asking for their review of Dr. Wells' report? Yeah. Any comments? You said that Mr. Flood said that he had forwarded his comments to Dr. Wells. I think that's kind of what we're looking for is, the people in charge of water quality for the state, what are their observations?
Okay.
And our goal, just from not only a commission perspective, but the citizen perspective, is just because we're in compliance doesn't mean we just want to stay in between that balance where we start getting right to the tip end of it. But we can still say it's safe. I think there's legitimate concern that we're doing all we can, and from a county perspective, protect that drinking water.
Yeah.
So anything that you find, even outside of that report, that might be relevant for the county and the commission to be able to study and hold MAC and hold the mayor and hold the county as elected officials, responsible for what we need to be doing. That's what we need to be doing.
Okay.
So if that's a start, the fall report, that's definitely what we want. But at least for me, and I hate to speak for anybody else, anything moving forward, as long as we're on the committee, that would be beneficial to see if there's anything that we might be able to head off, in maintenance or any sort of budget request that MAC or the mayor might present to us. We want to be diligent in that too.
Well, and anytime you've got a group of citizens who've taken on this level of involvement and responsibility in bringing, you know, an issue to our attention, I think it's important that we give it the full weight of study and evaluation. And so that's part of the reason I want to hear the reaction.
Okay.
Yeah, it's one of the very few, well, I shouldn't say very few, but certainly one of the most visible issues that affects every single person. School budgets sometimes don't affect everyone. Fire does. Water quality affects everybody. So that's certainly something that, as elected officials, we're going to have our feet held to the fire, and we should, but we also want to make sure, you know, we're protecting our families too.
Thank you so much for spending your time with
Yes,
us.
thank you. Very helpful.
Appreciate
Very
it.
helpful.
You're welcome. Very helpful. Well, glad to do it. Thanks for the invitation.
Okay, I think if there's nothing else on those lines, we have 2 resolutions.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'm from Nashville, and I've been working on solid waste for a long time. Could I make about 2 minutes worth of points?
Are you from an
Environmental group Burn, called Burn, and we've worked on Dixon County, Camden. We've been out here before, and I just have a couple of very quick points.
Really quickly.
Thank you so much. My name is Bruce Wood. I'm the elected president of Burn, Bring Urban Recycling to Nashville today, and we started in 1988. We have a long time history of pro-business, closing chronic polluters because business needs a clean environment. And I would just, the messages I'd make here is that my understanding is that Middle Point expanded, a major expansion 7 or 8 years ago. So you're getting a lot of new garbage, and in point of fact, Middle Point is the largest landfill in the state, and it's very poorly sited. It started off as this small landfill. It's on karst terrain next to a river, and yet it's sopping up all this solid waste and creating leachate. Would like to say that the simple solution is and within the law, is for you to say no more food waste, no more yard waste, and no more paper at our landfill, because I heard 54 permits every 4 months. And that's a vital part of your economy, that expansion and building. How quickly do those building permits go away if you have a major incident at this landfill? And it's not impossible. It's not impossible. I just got to say this. This landfill has disaster written all over it. You've got a Band-Aid here, you've got leachate here, you've got this problem there, the landfill cap isn't working. It's a hit and miss project that is just totally waiting, I think, possibly, for a very bad outcome. And I'll put this in writing and send it to you. My last point is it was said really quite repeatedly that the Class 4 landfills take innocuous materials. Well, we've had studies done on that. Southern Services is a Class 4 landfill in Nashville, and it takes these thousands of tons of industrial waste, such as uncured rubber, semi-volatile organic compounds, refractory bricks that commonly have high levels of heavy metals, fiberglass, adhesives and resins, and asbestos. This is going in your drinking water. I mean, these people, I just want to say, I've worked with them a lot. They provide us written material. They're very nice people. But they're also the people that created Dixon County and Camden landfills. So watch out. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have 2 resolutions.
Both of these resolutions are, you'll take them together or separately, or real similar?
We'll go together.
Both these resolutions are for the litter grant. One of them is for the county highway roads. The other one is for the state highway roads. It's something that we do each year. Both grants have actually gone down. The state grant was like $37,000. It's down to about $33,000. The highway or the county portion of it was $115,000. It's $95,000. So we'd like for you to send these resolutions on into budget and county commission so we can get our information in by the end of the month.
We sort of need to do those separate. The State roads, they've already sent us the contract to be executed, so we just need a resolution to accept that contract. Secondly, we have to sort of apply. They haven't actually sent us, so grant us permission to apply on the county roads, and then when they do send us a contract, we need to be able to execute that.
Does county roads go to budget? Or is
We'll
it
send them
ready
both.
to
They
go
both
to?
have money in them, so send them both on the budget.
Okay.
You wanna do them separate?
Yes, I think we need to.
Make a motion to do the one on the roads first, Taylor.
Second.
Any other questions or discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes. Okay, on the second one,
Make a motion to approve it.
Second.
any other questions or discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Black?
Yes.
Commissioner Jernigan?
Yes.
Commissioner Sereno?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Turner?
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yes.
That's all I have.
Okay, open house. June,
The 22nd, isn't it? Isn't that what we decided?
it was the third? Y'all open the first and third? Or second and fourth?
18th. That ring a bell?
That's what I
15th.
thought.
The 15th is a Saturday.
15th, I'm
Somewhere in
sorry.
there, right?
That's right.
Yeah, 15th.
Okay, we can, personally, I think the best way to do this would have a time period, 2 hours, and you can stop by, because one issue is gonna be transportation, right? And then, if you want to look at the other part of the landfill, and then the other issue, of course, we don't want to have any sunshine violations, so, I think that would probably be the best way to do it. Is there any other ideas, or?
Is this open house open to the public?
Well, the landfill's open to the public anyway.
Okay. With the tours and all that?
Now, we don't normally, we've never been asked to give a tour actually, but
Okay.
I think it was originally for this committee to be able to go out there and look at it.
I just know regarding like the open meetings issue, I think when it's open to the public, I think that.
Any
no
one of
one
you can
becomes
go
concerned.
anytime you choose to call Mr. Nolan and want to make an appointment. We will be available Sunday through Saturday.
Okay, thanks.
Just pick a time.
But this gives us a time that we know that, you know, Mr. Nolan's not gonna be on vacation, and, you can.
I think he can plan for it.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, sounds good. So the 15th from,
landfill's open from 8 a.m. to 11:55.
okay, so anytime on that morning, Mr. Nolan will be there, and you can come and view the landfill and get a tour. And
We go with it as a group or just individual?
well, we need to go just on your time, anytime
Okay.
between 8 and 11:55, 9.
It'd be
Before
easier if
12.
you come in groups instead of having 7 tours, but we can do that too.
True. But just know that no business can be discussed. We can't discuss if we want to spend money on one project or another at the landfill, or you know, if you want to talk to Mr. Nolan about it, then you can. But we can't, as a group, discuss it. And so we'll come back and we won't have our meeting probably in July. We don't typically have the July meeting, so we'll probably come back in August and we can discuss any issues at that time.
So, is this replacing our June meeting?
No. If we, that was the other option that we could do, but there's a lot of budget issues that come up in June, right? Fixing the end of the year budget, it's last month of the year, of the fiscal year, so.
I guess where I'm getting at is, this isn't an official meeting where we're going to be paid
Correct.
to show up.
No, it's not an official meeting. You can come, Mr. Nolan's gonna be on site, and he'll be there for you if you want to come and get a tour. Now I understand what you're asking. Any other questions or anything that needs to come before the committee? Okay, if not, we stand adjourned.